Okay, welcome to the weekly roundup. I'm going to go back old school, how we used to do it, where at least for today, where I don't just do chumash, I'll do a little bit of a snapshot into the week's daily cycle of learning, right? So in Chabad, we learn chitas, which is chumash, tehillim, Tanya, and the Rebbe added Rambam. So we'll speak a little bit about that, and then more into the actual parsha itself. So, Tehillim today, it's Kapitel Ayin Gimel, chapter 73. That's one of the chapters that we say. It's the final chapter that King David wrote. Now, it's not the final chapter in the book of Psalms or the book of Tehillim. Just like the Chumash, the Torah itself, it's out of order. It's not necessarily in chronological order, because it's not a history book, classic line, as we say. However, this kapitel is the last, kapitel means chapter, this is the last chapter written by King David himself, and he wrote it for his son, King Solomon. King Solomon took over the leadership. There's a bit of a fight between him and his brother, who came from two different mothers. Yeah, King David had many wives. There was two main wives, I guess you could say. They fought for the two wives fought that their children should be the king. One was the rightful leader, the one that King David himself promised would be the king, which was Shlomo Melech, King Solomon. So King Solomon ultimately became the king, without the whole story, getting to the whole story. And he was very young. He was a teenager. God came to him in a dream, and he said to him, I'll grant you one wish. What would you wish for? And he wished for wisdom, that I should be wise enough to take care of the people, know what to do. And this is actually the wish that King David had, and he writes it in the Psalms. And it opens up the Shlomo for my son. 72. Shlomo laki mishpatech lamelech tein v'tzidkascha levein melech. For my son Shlomo, Hashem should give you judgment. You should be a judgmental king, and you mean like a wise judgmental king. He should give you righteousness. The son of the king. It's the son of the king. So here he's declaring he's the son of the king. My son Shlomo, Hashem should give you wisdom. And interestingly enough, by Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence, King Solomon also asked for that same blessing, unknowingly. So that's the end of that's the last thing King David wrote. King David wasn't the only one that wrote Psalms. You had Psalms from Moses, the sons of Korach. Songs of Korach wrote the sons of Korach. Yosef. There are many different people who wrote Psalms in the book of Tehillim. In the book of Psalms, you see a few different people wrote chapters. Tanya, this week we're learning in the third book of Tanya, third out of 5. We're learning Geras HaTshuva, letters the Alter Rebbe wrote about Teshuvah, which are apropos as we're coming to the 3 weeks, which I'll speak about in a moment, as well as the month of, we're getting closer to the month of El. There's another month in between, but we're coming to the month of El. And here, the Alter Rebbe talks about where the soul of the Jew comes from, as opposed to the angels. So, Kichelik Amoy, what's it like? Kichelik Hashem Amoy, Kichelik Havaya Amoy. God says, the portion of my people are the Jewish people. Now, it says the portion of the, and it uses the name, a specific name of God, the Yod, Hey, and Vav, Hey name. Yeah, Havaya, as we call it. Says that we're a chelik of that level of Hashem, that way that Hashem expresses himself. That's the highest level of Hashem's expression, right? We know we all have different layers to ourselves, conscious, subconscious, super subconscious, and lower. Yeah, the deeper you go, the more true sense of self you are. That's like your truer self. It actually goes on infinite, if you want to know. It's infinite. You can never fully know yourself. That's what Chassidus says. Just like you can never fully know God, because there is no end. But the deepest expression of the truest self, who you truly are, is that level of Havaya. Comes from that level. This is very Kabbalistic. The level of Havaya, Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke. That's just the way Hashem is. Without anybody even being there, that's just the truest self of Hashem. As opposed to the Malachim, the angels come from this level of Elokim. Elokim, we know, is a concealment. It conceals God's essence. It conceals who God really is, so that we'll be able to appreciate him. Yeah, just like it's not a good idea to walk down the street, meet a stranger, and start telling them all your problems and your deepest, darkest secrets and your true self. It's gonna be too much. I can't handle that. You got to you have to put on a different mask. Yeah, the way you are in your home is the way differently than the way you are in the street. The way you are with your friends, with your best friend, with your spouse, siblings. We have different ways of expressing yourself, and they're layers. Yeah, they hold ourselves, they hold up who we truly are. So the person will be able to receive it. Yeah, you gotta be able to receive it properly. So the name Elokim is that ability of God of restraining himself. So the angels actually come from the level of Elokim. We come from the level of Avaya. And we speak about who, it's very powerful to know exactly from where you are and who you are at your core. Okay, that's basically the theme of Tanya this week, expressing that, explaining that, what that is. The Rambam this week talks about marriage. Back in the day, there used to be a two-part process to being married. It lasted for about a year. So from once you got engaged until you actually got married, it was about a year-long process. The first process is called Erusin, when the woman becomes separated. She cannot marry anybody else. She still continues to live in her parents' home, or her father's home more specifically. And then once, and that's actually, there's a big level of that. Once a person becomes, engaged, so to speak, the Erusin, she cannot become engaged to anybody else. And if they decide, God forbid, to not remain engaged, she actually has to have a divorce contract. So there is a level of holiness and a level of sanctity, and a lot of laws considering just the engagement process. And then after about 11 months, there's preparations and all these different things. They go into what's called Nisuyin or Kiddushin, which is the chuppah. And that's the first time the husband and the wife are alone together. And that's it. Now she comes out of her father's home, and she's now in the domain of her husband, so to speak. So it's called Erusin and Kedusha. Now a husband is not if they're engaged, that period of time in engagement, they're never allowed to be alone together. The husband and the fiance and the fiancés are not allowed to be alone together. It's a big problem. And if they are alone together in that period of time, there's nothing wrong according to the Torah, but the rabbis would give him malchus mardus. They would give him stripes for rebellious conduct. It was very inappropriate, and there would be consequences. Once they are married, nowadays we do Erusin and Kiddushin at the same time. You ever go to a wedding, traditional wedding, you'll see there's like multiple parts going on. What they call the, what do you have over there? You got the Kabbalah's Panim, and then you got the whatever. There's like this little pre-ceremony, and then there's the actual chuppah, and then the husband and wife are actually they're married with a contract, and then they go alone in a room together. It's called yichud. The Erusin and the Kedushin, the engagement, so to speak, it's a contract that we write. We write it by the chuppah. We write it by before the chuppah, maybe like a half an hour, 45 minutes before the chuppah. The Tanayim, there's conditions. They write a whole contract, and then there's another contract that we write that's the ketubah. That's more obligations that I give to my wife. So nowadays we do them at the same time. It's not a good idea to have long engagements. We try not to have long engagements. In New York, it's not rare in the Hasidic circles for a husband and wife to, once they become engaged, to be married within a month. Everybody lives there. Doesn't take much time. You already know which hall you're going to get married at. There's only X number of halls, X number of caterers, X number of flower people, X number of whatever. It can all happen. I basically plan my own personal wedding with my wife. I don't know. I think it took me on my end. It took me like 2 days, maybe 3 days. I knew exactly who I was going to ask and whatever. We got married in 3 months, I think. Could have done it even quicker, to be honest with you. So now we do it very quickly. Now, just some interesting laws. When you're getting engaged or when you're getting married, you have to give something. You're basically there's an exchange that's taking place. When I marry my wife, there's an exchange. I have to like purchase her, so to speak. It's an interesting way to say it, but that's kind of what it is. And I have to give her, you give her a ring typically, but there's other things I could do. I didn't have to give her a ring. I could have given her my cell phone. I said, look, I will marry you, and in exchange for marriage, I'm giving you my cell phone. And that's a binding sentence. And that, if I say that, a binding sentence, I didn't mean to say that. It's a binding statement. If I would have said, however, I'm giving you my car in exchange for your marriage, and I give her my phone, it's not a binding statement, and therefore we're not actually engaged. If I give her a coin and I say, this silver coin, I'm giving you the silver coin on the condition that on the condition that you marry me, and it turns out to be a gold coin, it's not binding. If I say I'm giving you, and he goes a bunch of lists and very interesting things. Another thing it says is I'm giving you on condition that I'm a wealthy person. It turns out that I'm poor. It's not a good marriage, and vice versa. If I tell her that I'm poor on the condition that I'm poor, but I'm really wealthy, it's also not good. It has to be a very accurate statement. So it gets into a whole back and forth of what you can say, what you can't say, and what makes things binding. Okay, that's basically what we're talking about in the Rambam this week. Okay, now, very interesting Torah portion, Parshas Pinchas. Now, what's interesting about Parshas Pinchas is that it really doesn't talk about Pinchas. It's only in the beginning. This week's Torah portion picks back up from the end of last week's portion. Now, at the end of last week's portion, we have the story of Bilam and Balak. King Balak is afraid of the Jewish people, and he knows if we try to fight them, we're not going to win. We've seen what happens. So he says, what is the Jewish people's, what makes them so strong? Their ability to pray, their speech, their ability to communicate with God. They have this special ability to communicate with God. So the only way I'm going to beat them and kill them is if I have somebody else that could probably talk to God. So they hire this prophet. He is a prophet named Bilam. He's disgusting. He's a lowlife, but he is a prophet nevertheless, to curse the Jewish people. He had this ability to curse people. Why? How did he have an ability to curse people? Because it says every day there's a moment that God is angry, and that's an opportune time to ask for things to harm other people. The Gemara has a whole back and forth. Is it literally a moment, or is it once you start at that, the moment starts, and if you can, start at that moment, you can continue along for an hour, like talking to God. So it seems like the conclusion is that as long as you know the moment, you get God's attention. You can hold God's attention for however long you need. Don't ask me what time that is. I don't know what time this is. But he had this ability. But Bilam said, I'm not really able to curse the Jewish people unless God allows me to, and God doesn't allow him to. In fact, beautiful blessings come out, some of the most famous blessings. Now, Balak is like, oh my gosh, we are not going to win. And, you deceived me, Bilam, you evil sorcerer, you. And Bilam said, you're right. I wasn't able to do it, but I'll tell you, there's one thing God hates, and it weakens God's protection over the Jewish people. And that will be an opportune time to try to kill them. And that is through adultery. When the Jewish people act illicit, immoral, sexually, that makes the God very angry, or he becomes takes a step back. And so Bilam says to Balak, take your most beautiful women, try to seduce them, and believe me, they're going to fall for it. A lot of the men are going to fall for it. That's a great time to attack. Kach have, that's exactly what happens. And a lot of Jews, the kingdom of Edom comes and starts to kill the Jewish people, and a lot of us are killed. Now, one very weird thing happens. From the tribe, Zimri, from the tribe of Shimon, the leader of the tribe of Shimon, so he's an extremely influential person, tzaddik, tzaddik, whatever. He is so overtaken by the beauty of Kuzbi, the princess of Edom, that he actually goes and is publicly he does something very inappropriate publicly in front of Moses, and he's looking at him in Moses' face while he's doing this very inappropriate thing with the daughter, a princess of Edom. No, Moab. Sorry, Moab. And Moses is stunned, and everyone is stunned, and they don't even know. Moses said, "I don't even know how to react." He's shocked, and he's standing still, except for what? And then what happens? Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Pinchas, a kanoi, a zealot, comes and he says, he comes and he takes a spear and he thrusts it between both parties and kills them. He kills Zimri and Kuzbi, and everyone, and the tribe of Shimon, that was their leader, was just killed. They come to kill him, and the Gemara tells us that he runs away. He actually starts running away, and he was so frightened, his soul left his body. Now, just to take a step back, I'll finish up this story in a second. Where did Pinchas have where did he have the audacity to do such a thing? So he remembered a halacha, a law from 40 years ago at the giving of the Torah. When God spoke to Moses, God gave him the written Torah, the oral Torah, how to interpret the Torah, how to actually interpret the written Torah. That's what we have, like the Gemara, the Mishnah, all these, the Talmud, the Mishnah. And he also taught him laws. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. These are laws that God spoke to Moses at Sinai. It's not written anywhere. It's not part of the oral tradition. Well, it is part of the oral tradition. But these are laws that God just said to Moses. And Moses taught all these laws. And we have many such laws. And one of the laws that Moses taught, that God taught Moses, was if somebody is committing adultery, now there's a halacha. You have to take them, they have to go to court, and they have to, there's like this whole process, due process. However, if somebody feels that they see an act being committed like this publicly, and they have within them, their soul just is overcome with this a desire to stop it, they can kill both parties at the same time. Now, this is the only time it ever happened. They can kill both parties at the same time, and he's totally free. Totally scot-free. And in fact, he's considered a zealot for God in a good way. Moses forgot this law. The only one that remembered it was Pinchas. And so Pinchas did it. It just came after it, killed him. Now the tribe of Shimon, everybody forgot. So the tribe of Shimon is coming to kill him. So he ran behind all the other tribes, and they protected him. And Moses and Pinchas explained his reasoning or no reasoning, but he explained the reasoning that it was a halacha from God, and Moses said he's right, and that he was protected. And interestingly enough, the Zohar says that his soul, after he left his body, when they were chasing after him, his soul has actually left his body, and two different souls came into his body. Why this had to happen, I don't know, but this is what the Zohar says. Whose souls came in there? The sons of Aaron. What are the sons of who are the ones that died? Oh my gosh. Lazar. Okay. What were the two sons of
Navirim.
Exactly. Yeah, Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, they came. It says Nadav and Avihu's neshamas, their souls were they found no menucha. They found no rest. They died. Remember, they died. They went into the Holy of Holies at the first day of the inauguration of the tabernacle. They got drunk, but they were overcome with such a love of God that their souls actually left their body. And fine, their souls left their body. So you think, and God and Moses spoke about how holy they were and how their intentions were really good, but they did something wrong. You're not supposed to do it like that. Only the Kohen Gadol, high priest, can go to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. They went in there and they shouldn't have done it, and their souls left their body. You think they go to heaven after such a eulogy that Moses gave. But no, it says that they found no rest. They didn't go to heaven. They didn't go to Gehenna. They didn't go to heaven or Gehenna. They didn't go anywhere. I don't know why, but that's what happened. Their souls actually came into into the body of Pinchas, revived Pinchas. And that's why the Torah, when it talks about the name of Pinchas, it's funny. It doesn't do this for anybody else. It says Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron Hakoye. If he's the son of Aaron, what do you mean the son of Aaron Hakoye? This is the grandson of Aaron Hakoye. He's the grandson of Aaron. No, because Pinchas is the son of Elazar, and then there's also the son of Aaron in there as well. Just a very interesting thing. We know that Pinchas is actually going to be, this is one of the sources that the Torah tells us, there's something called reincarnation. It says that the Torah, the Talmud tells us, our tradition tells us that Pinchas was reincarnated later on as Elijah the prophet. Pinchas, even though Elijah is going to live 700 years later, he's going to be the prophet. He's going to be reincarnated as Elijah. Now, Elijah was also a zealot in a very positive sense. Question is, why does Elijah, talking about Elijah for a moment, why is Elijah always present by a circumcision? Right here we have the seat of Elijah. Now, during the period of times that Elijah lived in a very very tough time in our history. We had some good kings and some really bad kings. And one of our really bad kings, his name was Achav. Achav forced the Jewish people to serve idols and paganism, etc., etc. And one of the things he did was he banned circumcision. Elijah didn't care. Elya, and he went and he convinced Jews, and he was very public about how Jews need to have circumcision. Achav obviously wanted to kill him. He hated him. But he was very successful, Elya. He was very successful in bringing Jews back to Judaism, back into the fold, into the tradition. God was so pleased with Elijah that he said, I'm going to give you the gift that you're going to be present by all brisses, by all circumcisions. So he's present at all, whether I see him physically, I'm not sure, but he's present at all circumcisions. And because Elijah comes to every circumcision, the tradition is we don't invite people to a circumcision. We only notify people of a circumcision. Yeah, there's going to be a bris milah taking place. We only notify. We like to notify you that in 7 days from now, our dear son is going to have a bris and he's going to have a name. But you don't say you're invited, because the Talmud says, imagine inviting if the person says, no, I can't make it. It's very disrespectful to Elijah, to say, oh, even though Elijah's coming, I'm not interested in seeing him. Rabbi Silverberg likes to add, I'm not sure Elijah would be offended, but nevertheless, that's what it is. Okay, moving on to the, anytime there's ever the time when we get killed or a big plague, God counts us. He counts us once again. The only one who's allowed to count God is God. The only one that's allowed to count the Jewish people is God. Any person, any king that's tried to count the Jewish people, take a census, looking at us and saying 1, 2, 3, bad things happen. So we want to take a census. The way we take a census is that back in the day we would give a coin, and that's how many. Then they would count the number of coins. When you go to a shul and you want to count, if you have 10 men for the minyan, you count yarmulkes, or you say a pasuk, Hoshia Samecha Varach Samecha Urim Menasem Elam. You say a pasuk, but you don't actually say, okay, we have 1 man here, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't count Jewish people. The only being that's allowed to count Jewish people is God himself. So God takes a census, and the biggest tribe is Yehuda. That's the biggest tribe. But the second biggest tribe was the tribe of Reuben. However, they were surpassed as the generations went on by the tribe of Dan. Now, why is it so significant? And they had a lot more people than everybody else, except for the tribe of Yehuda. Now, what's so unique about this? This is very interesting. Dan, when they went down to Egypt, Dan only had one child called Chushim. And Chushim had some special needs. Most notably, though, he was deaf. That was the big thing. He was deaf. So the Torah says, you think someone with such a, not so desirable, God forbid, you could say, oh, it's got not the best shidduch, perhaps you would say. Says the Torah, don't have that thought. God says, no, that's not true. Well, even a person that has such a he's a person with a disability, nevertheless can grow to be the most influential of all the tribes, can be an influential and the largest the largest of all the tribes. He can become the largest of all the tribes, the most influential of all the tribes. Don't underestimate anybody. And this theme, by the way, of don't underestimate leadership. And speaking about leadership, I'm going to jump to the end of the parsha. At the end of the parsha, the Talmud tells us, the Torah tells us that God allowed Moses to look at the land of Israel. He couldn't enter the land of Israel, but he could to look at the land of Israel. And Moses at that point, he was alone with God, and he was looking at the land over the land of Israel from the Sinai desert. And he asked God, I saw Aaron. I saw when Aaron passed away, his son was next to him, and his son Elazar inherited the position. And he saw the mantle of leadership, the mantle of priesthood, being passed on to his son. I too would like my son to take over. And God answered him, that's not happening. And Moses was upset, but he didn't say anything. He didn't argue. And God explained that when it comes to priesthood, fine. That is passed on through family. That's a tribal thing. That's passed on through family. But when it comes to Torah leadership, which is what Moses mainly was, Moshe Rabbeinu, very often you hear Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher. That's what we say, Moses our teacher. Anybody can be a leader. Anybody can be a Jewish leader. It's not based on who your father is. No, usually you're primed. Things are usually set up pretty well. Get the mind for it, the environment, the education. So chances are you probably will be the next in line, but God says, I don't make that a rule. That's not a rule. Torah leadership, and Joshua was more fitting as a Torah leader. He had more of the qualities as a Torah leader. Namely, one of the main things is humility, and he leads from the front. We lead from the front. Jewish leaders lead from the front. That was like unique. That was unique back then, especially that the leader should lead from the front. That's why the Torah makes a special statement that when Pharaoh was chasing the Jewish people coming out of Egypt, he says that Pharaoh led the way. He led from the front. That was unheard of. That was like an unusual thing. Okay, now just speaking about the tribe, something very interesting. Not always do the good guys win. When the Torah talks about the families that leave Egypt, it says that the tribe of Benjamin had 10 families. There were 10 families from the tribe of Benjamin that left, and it mentions a bunch of other families. Now, when they left, though, right now, when we're about to enter the land of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin only had 5 families. What happened to the other 5 families? There was 10 when they left Egypt. Now there's only 5. What happened? And also it mentions that only a few families from the tribe of Gad, Shimon, and Levi. What happened over here? What happened to all these families? All of a sudden, some of these families are like wiped off the face of the earth. So there's a very interesting story. When Aaron passed away, the cloud that protected the Jewish people went away as well. The cloud that laundered our clothing and kept us cool, protected us from the sun, from the enemies, bulldozed mountains. I mean, like wild miracles. It was there for the schut in the merit of Aaron. Now Aaron passes away, and the cloud leaves, and so half of the tribe of Benjamin, some of the people from Gad and Shimon, freak out, and they said, "There's no way we're going to win when we enter the land of Israel, because this is our protection. This was what waged the war." And they said, "We're going back to Egypt." Psychologically speaking, yeah, whenever something shakes up our faith a little bit, we quickly go back to the ways we were before. Everything we worked on, so all of a sudden gets thrown out the window. But now the tribe of Levi went back to try to convince them, guys, come back. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And they argued, and a big fight broke out. And who was killed? Who were the main people that were killed? The tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi, they had good intentions, and they were strong, and they were influential. But all of those Levites that went were killed. And half the tribe of Benjamin, Gad, and Shimon, a lot of them were killed as well. There was a big fight that broke out, and they continued on. We don't exactly know what happened to them. So over here, we see the Torah says that not always do the good guys win. Time is it over here? 12:32. Okay, read a little bit more. Okay, now we got the very famous daughters of Tzlafchad. It names their names, 5 daughters. If you can name their names right now, I'll give you 100 points. I'm forgetting them. Tirtzi, I don't know, I'm already forgetting. It names their names. What's the story of the daughters of Tzlafchad? Who was Tzlafchad? Tzlafchad was the truth is he was a good guy. He did something inappropriate on Shabbos. He went to go gather some wood. You're not allowed to gather wood on Shabbos, especially when there's no Erev and whatever. He was doing things that he shouldn't have been doing, and he was killed. The truth is he was doing it on purpose. He was doing it to prove that God's presence never left. The Jewish people were, at a certain point, were convinced that God's presence left them, that we made him mad, and he left. And he went to go prove that God's presence didn't leave, and protection, and the Kedusha was still there, and Shabbos still meant something, and he went and he did something wrong just to prove a point that God is still there. The Torah, although his intentions are good, the Torah says don't do things like that. You don't, that's not a way to be a martyr. We don't be martyrs like that. But nevertheless, fine. Now, Tzlafchad, this guy Tzlafchad, he only had daughters. He had 5 daughters. When the Jewish people are going to enter the land of Israel, God told each family, or really each tribe, and then each family, where's your portion in the land of Israel? And it goes according to the males. So the father then passes on to the son. And now what happens if you have no sons? Their father died, and they have no sons. So the tribe, their leadership said, I don't think you get a portion because you don't have any. Who is going to inherit from your father? You can't inherit from your father. And they said, no way. We love the land of Israel more than the rest of you. And that's why the Torah actually mentions their name, to show the merit that they had, that they were true Zionists. They really wanted to in the land of Israel. So they complained to Moses, and they said to Moses, it's not fair. We have no one to inherit our father's land. We should get the land. And Moses said, I hear what you're saying. Let me go talk to God. And God said yes. And God was very pleased. And he gave them a portion of the land. However, interestingly enough, inheritance still goes according to the son. Yeah, you can only inherit if you're a male. So because that law was never changed. The sages, however, said, you shouldn't have a will like that. You shouldn't leave your possessions in a way of inheritance. Rather, you should gift all of your children your possessions. You should write a contract that I'm gifting all of my children my possessions. I'm not leaving it up to inheritance. The laws of Nachla, Yerusha shouldn't be in the way of inheritance, the laws of inheritance, but rather the laws of gifting. And it says that all the children should have equal portion. Except for the firstborn son, you can have a double portion. And people still hold that today. However, you don't have to do it like that. You should try to do it in a way of gifting. The sages said this. This is like a very important thing. Just like something interesting, girls typically in history, girls did not go to Jewish school. It wasn't until in Russia and in Poland when the governments in the 19th century, or the 20th century, really the early 20th century, the government started forcing all children to get an education, like their government instituted education. Now, in order to combat that, the Jewish people, the girls themselves, the girls had to go to school. So the Jewish people felt we need some sort of like institution to combat this, to counteract this. So they started creating Jewish schools. Sarah Schneier was the first. She was never married. Interesting lady, very interesting lady, a big genius. She really instituted the first Jew all-girls school. Now it's everybody has girls' schools for girls, Jewish schools for girls. But in order that really took off, and that really brought up the level of Torah scholarship, because now you have both men and women, and it's all over the world. Never in the history of the Jewish people have so many Jews been learning Torah. You guys know that? Never in the history of the Jewish people. It's so accessible that we've never had such a thing, and the level of Torah scholarship has gone up thanks to women being involved. What can I say? Moving on a little bit. Yeah, okay, fine. Stay there. This is the parsha. We always read the parsha ends off with talking about the daily sacrifices. This is the parsha that we read every maft here. We always read this portion on holidays and on Rosh Chodesh. So we actually have a Torah dedicated here in the shul, just always on Parshas Pinchas. Always dedicated to Parshas Pinchas, as many shuls do as well. Okay, we'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions? Good. Oh gosh, sorry. Just kidding.
Rabbi,
Yeah. What's up, Moshe?
you think you were gonna leave that quick?
What?
Hey, I was reading a few days ago. I can't remember if it was Hasidus or the Zohar that was talking about that Pinchas. The reason why Pinchas was granted that honor was because he was actually Yitro's grandson.
Yeah, he was.
You heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with it, right?
Yeah. In fact, that's how they were making fun of him, because they said, "You're
Right.
Putiel. You're the son of the one who fattens up the cows." His father Yisro was like extremely wealthy, and he was into like weird stuff. One of them, before he became Jewish, was he would fatten up cows and then slaughter them, and they would offer to the pagan gods a very fat cow. So they said, how could such a fat, you come from such a blemished lineage, you can't be, after Pinchas merited, right, to be a Kohen, God gave him they called the Britzi Shalom. I didn't really get into it, but he became, a priest, and they made fun of him. They said, how could you give him such a honor when he comes from such a blemished lineage, so to speak? And but God said, no, it doesn't matter what your lineage is. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew, and I can do whatever I want and set the rules. But yes, you're absolutely right. But Yisro was incredible. I mean, Yisro's name, Yisro, even though he had a bad past, he was the ultimate. He represented exactly what Judaism is trying to do, is that you could transform yourself completely. Yeah, we try to elevate everything, even the lowest of the low, the priest of the most decadent, disgusting, whatever. So it's like the pinnacle of the lowest. He himself becomes a Torah giant, a Jewish giant, a Jewish leader, the ultimate transformation. So much so, how incredible Yisro was, truly, that the Ten Commandments, the giving of the Torah, is the parsha that it's in is named after Yisro himself, showing that that's our ultimate goal. So so Yisro was an incredible. Obviously, he was eccentric, but he was a genius, and he was a very good person, Just needed a little guidance. Okay. With that, I leave you. Tonight should be Tanya for women and Rambam for men and women and children.
So was it Hasidus or was it Zohar?
No, that's actually in the Chumash itself. That's Rashi brings that down.
In the Chumash, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question. Good point. Thank you for making that. All right, everybody. I wish you a good rest of the day.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, see you guys. See you.